throughout the better part of the 19th century and even into the early 20th century, Columbia was known for its gardens. Columbia had a rich horticultural heritage, and that heritage was established, or at least the roots of it were established during the very early 19th century with subsequent generations of Columbians planting various private tracts in what is downtown Columbia now. And among some of those earliest horticulturists or people who are enthusiastic about experimenting with horticulture was Nicholas Herbemont. Nicholas Herbemont establishes not just his residence, which was a fine home located in the northwest corner of a block bounded by Bull Street, Lady Street, Pickens, and Gervais. It's also here on this spot that he makes history by establishing a significant garden that grows in importance as Herbemont continues to experiment with grapes, both imported and of a native variety. And it's from this experimentation that Herbemont is able to have not just a local or a regional impact, but indeed an international impact. Herbemont dies in 1839, and it's 1872, after the Civil War, during the Reconstruction period, that cartographer Camille Dry comes to create a visual representation of Columbia. And it's interesting to see the estate that Herbemont had established in 1809, represented here, during which time it was owned by the Lyons family. But even in 1872, you see the property was well established and there was considerable land devoted to the growth of gardens. Herbemont was an influential individual. His concepts and instruction for grafting would become kind of the standard. Of course, the home that he established and nurtured for several decades bore no resemblance to what we have today. He would truly be lost in his own backyard because there is virtually no yard to the track anymore. It's largely a sea of commercial buildings, a few repurposed later 19th century residences, and a lot of parking. But it's here during the early 19th century that Herbemont would establish what became a renowned garden, and it was also here that he experimented with growing grapes, a pursuit that he also endeavored to continue outside of the bounds of downtown. So in what would be known as the Sandhills of Richland County, 4.5 to 5 miles outside of the capital city, in an area today that's located what we'd call forest acres, sandy area, one that would have lent itself well to growing grapes, and one today that is largely encompassed in a wooded area in this playing field that's part of Richland District 1 school system. What I find fascinating is that Herbemont was responsible for grafting varieties of native and imported grapes and synthesizing those in a pleasing way here in Columbia. Columbia itself was very much a synthesis of people. It was located here specifically in 1786 as a compromise. It was a compromise politically, but it was also, interestingly enough, geographically in the center of South Carolina. It was here on the fall line that Columbia was established as the second state capital. It would have been a little bit of a trek to get to this area from the downtown, from Herbemont's more perhaps lush and lively home, not far from the State House and from South Carolina College. But it was in this area during the course of Herbemont's time in Columbia, so 1809 to 1839. He would have spent a considerable amount of time cultivating grapes, grafting and experimenting. And it's from these experiments and the work that he was doing at his residence in downtown Columbia that he would have had the most incredible impact, not just here in Columbia and in the state and the region, but also nationally and internationally.
Nicholas Herbemont was a refugee of the French Revolution who came to America in the 1790s and found himself eventually in South Carolina. And when the College of South Carolina, it's now called the University of South Carolina, was organized in 1805, Nicholas Herbemont was hired as the first instructor of French at that college. Now it turns out that he had other profound interests too. He was a native of the Champagne in France and had an abiding love of wine grapes. And he attempted to grow over 200 varieties here in South Carolina. And unfortunately he discovered what people had learned by painful experience over the last 2 centuries, that when you try to grow a European grape in North America, which has so many native grapes that the Vikings called it Vinland, those native grapes have defenses to ensure that the health of interlopers does not thrive. Nicholas Herbemont was a scientific and experimental grower, viticulturist, and he hit upon a solution which allowed him to become the first person to offer vintage wines commercially on a regular basis of anyone in America. He did it in the 1820s. He hybridized the disease-resistant native grapes with European Vitis vinifera grapes, getting the taste of the European grape with the disease-resistant of the native grape. And he cultivated those as the basis of his wine. And this would be the solution that was followed by most commercial winemakers in America for the next century. One of the things that Herbemont was aware of was that there were grapes that were adapted to every situation. Indeed, he thought of what some people would consider the poverty of the soil of the Midlands, particularly in the sandhills, as an absolute benefit. And he proposed to the legislature of South Carolina, if you subvent me, I will turn the Midlands of South Carolina into a Swiss-type winemaking district. Indeed, he proposed the importation of an entire town of winemakers from Switzerland to inhabit this area and to make South Carolina the first great wine state in the United States. This proposal came within 1 vote of passing in the South Carolina legislature. I guess the thing that prevents us from being, like the Napa Valley or the Niagara District in New York, or some of those, the old German wine districts in Missouri or the Ohio Valley, was a political lack of vision of some people. We have to look to the grapes and find their virtues. Herbemont was actually used as a fortified wine too. Some people considered it the equivalent of one of the Madeira grapes, and so you had people experimenting in that direction. The Herbemont was grown around the world, still grown substantially in Brazil, and it was used in Europe as rootstock to save the European vines from phylloxera, this mite that was attacking the roots of European vines, and that there were several vines, the Mustang grape, for instance, of Texas, and the Herbemont, which were resistant to this. So when phylloxera hits the European great estates and threatens the annihilation of fine wine as we knew it, virtually every Herbemont grape growing in the vineyards in Missouri and Texas and South Carolina were pulled up, shipped across the ocean to use as rootstock for grafting on the Vitis vinifera to save the European grapes. And that's why the Herbemont of the great 19th century wine grapes doesn't survive, while the other ones like Catawba and the Niagara grape and Concord grape all survive, and wine is still made from those grapes. It's interesting. I've been talking to various people about reintroducing it. So when I heard that Evan and Keith were going to bring this back here at Historic Columbia, my heart leaped up. Herbemont was coming back, to a spot within 4 blocks of where his original vineyard had been. So who is going to make sure that the greatest creations that historic horticulture has produced, or historic pomology has produced, who's going to ensure that they survive into the future? Well, it's institutions like universities, or historic sites, or foundations like the Carolina Gold Rice Foundation that is willing to underwrite the maintenance, the replication of these things. And what's the payoff? Well, I'd suggest that one of the payoffs is flavor. All of these creations that were done in the 19th, early 20th century had flavor as an important criterion in the breeding aesthetics of the plant. Nowadays, there are agronomic things which have eclipsed that. The disease resistance, appearance, shelf life, transportability, processability, productivity, quickness to maturation. There's a whole list of things, and you'll find flavor way down. And the flavors of these grapes are different than even the grapes that we're familiar with.
My name is Keith Mearns, and I'm the horticulturist for Historic Columbia. I've been here almost 2 years, and it's been a great experience and a great job. And after I came here, I started looking through the materials that we have here at Historic Columbia and persons who contribute to that information. And during that time, I came across the name Nicholas Herbemont, who lived in our neighborhood here, where most of our properties at Historic Columbia are. And of course, this started a search for this plant. Where is it? Why isn't it here anymore? None of the land-grant universities here on the East Coast had this anymore, but Texas A&M did. They still have it in wineries in Texas, and they did have it, and they were more than willing to send me cuttings and even a few grafted plants, which was wonderful. I was ecstatic about it because they didn't know me, but I did contact them and explain our interest in this plant and why it's so important to Columbia. So they sent the cuttings to me, and when they came to me, they were really just a bundle of sticks, rubber banded together, no roots, and I really was hoping to be able to get them to work because Herbemont did not graft his grapes. He took cuttings, he planted them directly into the ground. So I wanted to get these things on their own roots to really see what Herbemont saw when he was doing this. And when they send you something like that, it looks like this. It is absolutely a bare stick. So what you've got to do is score it, sort of wound it a little bit, put some rooting hormone on it, and just put it right into some wood chips and just wait. We are a year and a half into this experiment with the Herbemont grape, and it's going exceedingly well. The grafted plants that Texas A&M supplied to us are at Robert Mills' house, right near our gift shop, and they are up on the arbors. It took them 1 year to do that. And this year they are absolutely laden with fruit, which is very exciting. In fact, the cuttings that I rooted from our first package from Texas A&M have done exceedingly well. This is one of them right here, and it even has a few fruit on it. So this plant is on its own roots, and it's done that for us already. So for 1 year we went from this to this, which is really exciting. Additionally, this past winter I took more cuttings from the plants we planted last year to see what kind of production we could get from that. And so we've got that here. We've got 27 one-gallon pots already from our plants that we took cuttings from, which is exciting because we can begin to really think about how to distribute this most effectively. So here we are at our most mature planting of Herbemont grapes here at Historic Columbia. This particular pear right here has only been in the ground for 1.5 years. So we are very excited at their success so far.
And usually it's what, 3 years to get a full bloom of grapes here, and this is just laden.
And it really is. We just pruned it so you can see everything, and so they develop better. And they have done extremely well. They rooted really well for us, and we got them in the ground as soon as we could. And we can expect, I think, to see these turn a nice light brown color later on in the season. I've never tasted these. I've never seen them in person, so this will be exciting for me along that front.
They were good as a table grape. The raw juice was used as verjuice in cooking, and of course we made that rosé wine out of it, which was sold all across the United States.
You know, it was adapted to this place. It was adapted to the Sandhills area of this state, of the Midlands, which is unique. So we're bringing back this unique genetics back here again. There's no reason to think that it won't do excellent in this place. This seedling was found only blocks from here. You know, the Sandhills of this state do have unique potential, I think. And you know, it may even go to the point of realizing Herbemont's dream of getting a wine region in the southeast. It's not just to grow this at a historic site. It's not just maybe to have one in your backyard. It's maybe to develop a place for it in the cuisine and or in some kind of wine industry. And so finding a place for it to be preserved that way is really where its security will come from. If it's needed and required by producers to make specific varietals, to make specific blends, whatever its place ends up being that way, that's what we need to find. And to that end, we are propagating this to disseminate to individuals who can take it that next step, who can scale it up, who can discover its niche in the culinary world, and make it a fixture in South Carolina and maybe outside the state as well.
City Roots Farm. We're South Carolina's first urban farm. We're a certified organic farm here in downtown Columbia, South Carolina, located in the Rosewood neighborhood. We sit on approximately 5 acres. We produce a wide diversity of vegetables throughout the year on the farm. And over the years, we've done a number of festivals and events on the farm. One of which we're really excited about is the Rosé Wine Festival. And a couple years back, in conversations with Keith and David Shields, really found about the rediscovery of the Herbemont grape and how integral that was to the southeast and how important of a role that it played in the south and vineyards and wine production. We're really excited today to be planting 2 of those specimens here at City Roots. In a couple of years, we hope to enjoy the fruit of the vine, literally and figuratively, and hope also to help propagate and produce more of these and take some cuttings in the future and grow them on further sites on our farm and make these a grape that can then be on our tables again, both as an eating grape and a wine-producing grape. Just really excited to be part of a, I guess, southern heritage of grape production, and love to see that come back here to Columbia.
Which is a good segue into rootstock, is it not?
Oh, that's true. So you're on the Grignolino.
Yes, it's fantastic.
We've played with the Greco Bianco.
So,
yeah.
forgive me if I'm wrong, Grignolino is only going to be Italian, right?
I've never had a Grignolino that wasn't Italian.
Okay, what about a Greco Bianco? By its very name, I guess it has to be Greco.
Or Greek in origin.
Or Greek.
And then kind of finding itself only that. Like so many of these Greek names are incredibly obscure anyway. Don't really know what's gonna,
That's true.
we're gonna have. But yeah, I think I've only seen that in Italy. Only seen that specifically in like Piedmont.
Right.
There are no other alternative names, to
For
it.
Grignolino.
Grignolino. What's the other one that I wanted to? Something that we played with before. Jacquier.
Jacquier from the Savoie, only from Savoie.
Only from the Savoie. Like a little bit in Condrio, I think, but it's not like it's.
Right, but mostly nearly Swiss.
So these guys, it's always just kind of fun playing with wines that really only you find in one place.
Sure.
Or like those wines that you find in like their adoptive home. Then you got stuff in South America, particularly, like Carmenere, right? That's originally Bordeaux. Tanat in Uruguay.
Sure.
That was originally like Madaran, I think.
Right.
Some Brazilian stuff that's happening now that's like classically French. Chardonnay and Pinot with some sparkling going on down there.
So you have very limited knowledge of Brazilian wines.
There's very little coming out of there. Very little making it here, which in and of itself is kind of an irony because right here in Columbia, just a couple miles in that direction downtown, there's a grape that's being revitalized that's called Herbemont. And Herbemont is grown now in Brazil to some degree of success as I understand it. And I guess it kind of makes sense with the humidity and the heat that we both share.
So wait. There was a grape grown in downtown Columbia.
Yeah. So this is like 1800s, somewhere in that neighborhood. A man named Nicholas Herbemont came down from France. He was born in the Champagne region. I believe he was like the state's first French teacher. And he really embraced a lot of Colombian culture in general, but particularly agriculture, horticulture, and viniculture. He was very excited about wine in general. He was very jazzed about taking us away from the mode at the time, which was very like chaptalized and fortified, and trying to go for a cleaner, brighter, more elegant style of wine, which is kind of still happening with old world versus new world. But yeah, so the grape itself is it's got a bit of a brown color to it. So he generally made it in a rosé style. I think that was his favorite way to do it. Kind of like Pinot Grigio or Pinot Gris has a color to the grape, not enough for red, but enough for rosé.
So we're gonna stay like palate-wise. It's going to be what? What would be a flavor profile on this?
Gosh, I mean it's so difficult.
I guess we have to assume because
it actually tastes like now.
Right.
I would imagine on the drier side, because he was so intent on removing himself from the style of the time. I would imagine maybe a little drippy, because of the color and the skin.
So drippy as in tannin?
As in tannin,
okay.
Yeah. And I would imagine maybe a little bit of weight, since he also made a fortified, coincidentally, a fortified wine that was sort of referred to as a Madeira, and one presumes shared a lot of Madeira qualities. And I would imagine you can only do that with a weightier wine.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, he had a fascinating and broad influence on wine in general, not just Colombia. The fact that it's back now from what we thought was extinction was largely the work of Historic Colombia, rather. And horticulturalist Keith Mearns got in touch with Texas A&M, and they sent him some cuttings of the Herbemont grape. And that was about a year and a half ago.
So he's growing it.
He's growing it right now.
Oh, that's so exciting. I can't wait to have some Herbemont.
It's going to happen. And it's about a year and a half, so we're looking at
A couple of years down the road.
a couple of years, that's traditionally how that works. But yeah, so that's going on up there at the Robert Mills House downtown, conveniently about 4 blocks away from where Herbemont had its original gardens downtown.
So it's going to be as close to the original Herbemont as Herbemont would want.
Came home.
Came home.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. What a great
Yeah.
story.
And a wonderful kind of symmetry.
Yes.
Yeah. Which could be why it's growing just prolifically right now. I mean, it's in an arbor and there's some other cuttings, but man, I mean, it's coming in hard, very vigorously. So,
Can you imagine how amazing it'll be to have like a South Carolina alternative to Scuppernong and Muscadine? Something that's actually like dry and goes great with food.
we can be proud of it. We have so much
Yeah.
great food happening right now with places like City Roots and our own regional sort of slow foods projects.
Sure, that's something to be very excited about.
Something that as somebody who sells wine, something that you can really dig into and be proud of on a different level.
Precisely. Yeah.
So yeah, this is all happening.
So, cheers to chapter 1 of Herbemont coming home, and here's to the next chapter of Herbemont.
Cheers to that.
I got to have it. I got to have it. Port wine, port wine, port wine, so fine. I woke up this morning and I could hardly keep from crying. I woke up this morning and I could hardly keep from crying. 'Cause that double-dealing woman had cut out with all my wine. Now, do you want to see me happy? Do you want to see me be a real good sport? Do you want to see me happy? Do you want to see me be a real good sport? Just give me lots of loving and keep me full of port.